Hello and welcome to Bury Our Bones with Cinema, the podcast that lives, breathes and dies classic movies, not so classic movies and everything in between. Joining me once again is the wonderful Mr. Gaz Evans. In today's episode, we land on LV-426 with perhaps the greatest sequel ever made, James Cameron's Aliens. So join us as we kill a xenomorph queen, try not to cut off one of Private Hudson's fingers, and finally tell everyone who goes near Newt to get away from her, you bitch. This podcast contains spoilers. 1986's Aliens, James Cameron's sequel to arguably one of the greatest sci-fi horror movies ever made. And, you know, we said quite quickly before recording that we were going to do The Burbs, which we probably still will do at some point. But I got halfway through this week and was like, I just want to watch Aliens.
Understandable.
And what a decision to have made, because it is just such a good movie. Such a good movie.
I think it might be a masterpiece, actually. I really do think so. Yeah, I mean, it just is, I think, quite frankly. It's Jaws is my favourite film, Aliens is second, but some days it can kind of swap over. Yeah, Aliens is right out there for me. I am, and was just really obsessed with this film. Every minute detail, every shot, every line of dialogue. Yeah, it's fantastic. And it's not for nothing that when I was 40 a few years ago for my birthday, it was kind of the tail end of the second round of the lockdowns. And my wife said to me, oh, why don't you hire out one of the screens at the Dome Cinema in Worthing, where we are? And I couldn't believe it didn't occur to me. But yeah, I was like, oh, yeah. And I narrowed it down to 3 possible films that I'd show for my birthday in a screen with 40 friends, 40 seats for my 40th birthday. And it was Grease 2 or The Thing or Aliens. And Grease 2, I thought would be pushing it with some people, understandably. The Thing, yeah, incredible. Shorter film as well, but just bleak. You know, it's a bleaker film. And Aliens is just so much fun. It's a deadly serious film, but it is so hugely entertaining. And for the last hour, at least, it just grips you. It never stops, that last hour. From the moment the aliens start getting in, you know, crawling in through the ceiling when they're locked away, it doesn't let up from that moment onwards.
I think it's one of those movies that can, because it's so successful, it kind of flies under the radar of it being artistically amazing and a masterpiece. You know, it can, to the untrained eye or to somebody who scoffs at sci-fi movies, it can very easily just be like, oh, this is just a popcorn movie.
When you know what's gone into the making of this film and the corners that have been cut and the hassle that James Cameron and Galen Hurd had making it with this British crew who kind of worshipped Ridley Scott and had a very particular union ordained way of working, stopping for tea breaks, working for certain hours, which Cameron had no truck for. And you know how they kind of, you know, just kind of managed to save money here and there on the budget, and through editing and suggestion made you believe that you were looking at hundreds and hundreds of aliens rather than just 3 or 4 guys in a suit. It just makes it all the more amazing that it looks and feels as just superb as it does.
And for a movie that is 40 years old next year, this looks incredible.
Yeah.
Absolutely incredible. Now, I've obviously got the newly released 4K version, but even the Blu-ray and DVD versions hold up so well, and it looks absolutely incredible. And sometimes when you watch movies from that era, you try and look for the seams, you try and necessarily kind of look through what's going on and what is the, you know, how is this done? And it's so difficult to see that here.
Yeah,
like, there's a couple of shots where the limitations of the, you know, of the time are there.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, it looks incredible.
Yeah.
It looks so good.
That laser beam in the opening sequence with the salvage team that kind of blue kind of vertical light that kind of swoops around the room, and all that kind of Tony Scott style smoke kind of in the light, and as it goes past the camera and that goes vroom, I always get just a little shiver when that happens.
It's, that is a hair standing up on the back of your neck type moment where you just, because it's a very, very, I mean, changing the subject completely, this has a Adam Klaus cameo. Anybody who's a Jonathan Creek fan will know the magician that Jonathan Creek works for is Adam Klaus, and he is in this movie, which I totally forgot about. He's the guy who discovers Ripley.
Oh, right, okay.
Immediately.
I
originally played by Anthony Head, but then played by the guy who's in Aliens. It's a massive detour. But yeah, when that blue strobe
I haven't watched Aliens on a TV screen this big. And I've got the 4K at home and I've watched it, but this looks gorgeous. I've really got to have a word at home and, knock down a wall perhaps and justify
I am a bad
getting
influence when it comes to TV sizes.
It is just gorgeous, man.
I mean, me and Hannah often have a conversation where we go, we could definitely go bigger. And
when you do, sell me your TV.
I mean, and I think, a lot of the time, when you buy a movie from the 80s, the 70s, even the 90s, and you stick it in 4K, to the average casual movie viewer, then you don't notice it really, other than it looking a little bit more crisp, a little bit more, sharp in places. But Aliens is one of those movies that the better the format you're watching it on, the more you get out of it, because it is so, that, as you say, that blue light that pans across the screen is so iconic for what was a very, very risky movie. Yes, okay, it's a sequel, so you kind of, you've got a foot in the door when it comes to making your money back, but to change essentially the genre of a movie, because Aliens is very much a sci-fi horror. Yeah. And this kind of comes along, and there are elements of sci-fi horror, don't get me wrong, but this is a sci-fi action movie. Yeah. And to change the genre and it still be, in my eyes, I think it's better than the original. Yes, there's slightly different movies, but I would much prefer to stick on Aliens than stick on Alien. And to do that
me too.
Is a testament to the vision that James Cameron had. Yes. And also to the people who worked on the movie, who clearly at several points weren't fully invested in this Yank, as they called him, despite the fact he's from Canada, and still managed to pull it off. Yeah. What is essentially a big kind of, in a professional way, a big FU to the first movie by going, here's what you done, we can build on that, but I'm going to make it better.
Yeah. I mean, like changing the design of the alien and things like that. Yeah. There would have been other directors. And technically, Cameron was a director for hire on this-ish. It doesn't feel like it, but especially when you see what he went on to do. But, they could have put another director on this, but it still has his absolute stamp of James Cameron all over it. And a lot of other directors for hire would have been far too in reverence of the original to have the nerve to do anything drastically different. Yeah,
it would have just been a copy and paste type job. And I'm not saying that would necessarily have been a bad thing, because and other than perhaps the artistry that would have gone into that. Yeah. But we hadn't got to a point where we were oversaturated with that style of movie at this point. So if it had been an Alien 2, for lack of a better term, it wouldn't have necessarily have been a flop or a bad movie. But as I say, to come in and just go, I respect what happened in the original, but that doesn't mean I have to follow those rules. Doesn't mean I have to do exactly what they done and not deviate from that.
Yeah. Of course, Fincher did the same thing with Alien 3, and that really backfired on him. Well, depending on where you sit on the argument.
I mean, I watched it shortly after watching this.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying it's a very, very distant third place in terms of quality.
Yeah.
But that's not to say it's a bad movie. I quite enjoy it.
I find it fascinating. I go back to it quite often.
I think it's a great movie that by that point people did have expectations as to what the thing that makes that movie not as good, and it's a phrase that was used in that documentary that we both watched that's on Shudder called Aliens Expanded, is that you can't have a good monster movie without a good monster. And in Aliens 3, it does look like it was made in the early 90s, if not late 80s, because the CGI is quite pants.
Yes.
You know, and, you know, we always go back to that thing of CGI versus practical effects. But the reason why this holds up so well is because what you're seeing on screen, you know, other than camera trickery, pretty much happened. You know, the sets are real sets. The vehicles are real vehicles.
Yeah.
Okay, they might be miniatures in places, but they are real vehicles. They are physically in that space as you watch it. And because of that, you have this whole sense of this actually being a place in the universe and not being this thing that's been created on a screen. And it's really important for a movie set in space or set in a world that we're not familiar with to create that sense of it being somewhere tangible where if you wanted to, you could go there.
Yeah.
You know, case in point, Batman 1989 actually was there because a lot of the same sets were used in that movie. And there are a couple of shots where because I didn't know that before watching that documentary. And there was a couple of shots after watching the documentary that I went back and watched and went, I can see that exact same shot in Burton's Batman.
Yeah. I love that the only kind of slightly different thing about the wardrobe in the future for men at least is the slightly cut off collars on their jackets. That's the only kind of thing.
It is quite funny. There's that story that Paul Reiser says that, you know, for months and months and months they were measuring him, getting his sizes, and they were like, it's all right, we're going to come up with this really great suit, and then literally they gave him a suit and it was just with the collar turned up. And it's that thing of, I think, you know, as people who've worked in the theatre industry, we've all been in those situations where you've got these lofty ideas of what the costume may be or what the set might be like, and you don't see it, and then you see it, and then sometimes you're like, oh, okay, that's what we're working with. But I quite like that. I think it's very important a lot of the time when you do movies that are set in the future to not have ideas or concepts that are far too incomprehensible to get your head around. Yeah,
I mean, yeah.
So one of the things that was said is that all of the science aspects, all the science fiction based aspects of this movie and of great sci-fi movies are all futuristic stuff, but stuff we're kind of already exploring.
Yeah, exactly. The best sci-fi, or well, any sci-fi almost inevitably, I mean, is very, very political because they often have themes that relate to the real world, but that perhaps would be too on the nose if you dealt with them without a genre sheen. But with sci-fi and these fantastical alternate parallel worlds or future worlds, you could talk about what's going on now under the guise of, you know, an exciting sci-fi flick. And maybe that's one of the subconscious reasons why sci-fi doesn't do particularly well at awards or anything like that, even though it takes a hell of a lot of craft to put them together and all sorts of other elements that you don't need in a typical drama necessarily, like effects. Maybe that's why, because sci-fi often, well, this one is quite anti-corporate, and so's Alien. And, you know, all these... And they're still talking about it in Alien Earth. That's the big thread of Alien Earth, is basically the world is run by corporations. RoboCop is the same, you know, and it's right now, I you know, a few years' time, I can't, you know, these big corporate Apple and Amazon and Disney, they're going to be perhaps more important and more in control than the government. Maybe arguably they already are. And so it tells you something that 40 years later, Alien Earth, the series, the main thing is about these competing conglomerates and corporations that run the world, and they're just trying to backstab each other. And the alien stuff is actually almost secondary.
Yeah, I mean, I love this element of 80s movies where it seemed to be there were so many good examples of that kind of satire and that kind of exploration into that relationship between society and tech and companies and capitalism.
Yeah.
You know, it's one of those things where the aliens in this movie become secondary in a way where you haven't got time to see the flaws or to get bored of that particular concept. And I always go back to this phrase where I say, you know, aliens is why we buy the ticket. It's not the reason we return to the movie, you know, and, you know, so many films or great films are like that, whereby on the face of it, it's about one thing, but the more you watch it, the more you get into the nuts and bolts of the narrative, you realize it's not about that. It's about something else.
Yeah.
You know, I watched this with Hannah the other day when we were prepping for this episode.
You're a good husband.
And I know that. This is 100% not her type of movie at all. But there were points where I could see she was more interested than perhaps she would be if it was just an average alien type movie.
Yeah.
You know, and that to me is sometimes always a bit of an indicator of how good a movie is that if somebody like Hannah, who isn't necessarily interested in sci-fi 80s movies, I mean, I don't think you could get two phrases that would put her off a movie more than sci-fi and 80s.
Had she not seen it before the other day?
No, she hadn't seen it before. And she did fall asleep. She has been working very, very hard, so I don't hold that against her as much as I would like to. But, I was saying, because I'm trying to sort of like, I don't want Hannah to sit there and scoff at stuff, and I'm trying to preempt stuff. So some of the, the external shots where, you've got the ships and they're, descending down onto LV-426, you can see a little bit. You can see the age there. So I said, you can see on those shots it's an 80s movie. And she immediately went, I don't know, it still looks great to me. And I was like, boom, we're in business.
That's a mirror. Though that big row, there you go, that big row of capsules, pods that are all in, there's a mirror down the middle that makes 4 of them look like 16 or whatever.
Yeah, and it's that kind of camera trickery.
Yeah, and today that would be CGI.
It would be CGI, and it wouldn't look any worse or any better necessarily. And, the argument there is obviously to build that and to make that would probably cost more than asking somebody on a machine to do that potentially. But it's that artistry that goes into, right, how are we going to get around this problem? Rather than pushing a button on a laptop, you're going, right, okay, well, if we position that there, the camera goes there, then that way we've got 16 as opposed to 4.
There's a real thesis to be written about whether, 80s horror, 80s sci-fi, anything that involves effects is, measurably, or whether the films at that time were better because the lack of computer and digital technology meant that filming shots wasn't just filming shots, it was solving problems. It was, how do we show this? And, they weren't even discussing the sorts of technology that would have helped. It wasn't there yet. It wouldn't be long, but I wonder, because now perhaps it's and don't get me wrong, everyone can be really critical of CGI, and CGI can be used in amazing, astonishing ways, but it is a completely new and different method. It might not even involve a filmed shot full stop.
Yeah,
So
you know, some movies nowadays are entirely green screen. You know, things like, I mean, another James Cameron movie, you know, the Avatar movies, which, I mean, I went to see The Running Man last night. And the trailer that opened it up was Avatar: Fire and Ash, and all I could
doesn't that look identical to the second one?
I was trying to figure out, is this the second one or is this the third one? Because I can't even remember the second one. I've only seen the first one once, but all I could remember saying was, it is such a shame that James Cameron is obsessed with making movies about blue people.
Yeah,
because. And I'm, you know, if you like the Avatar movies, then fair enough.
Yeah.
It's definitely not my bag. I thought, you know, the 2008 original was an extended tech demo and it looked great. I haven't been back and watched it since, but at the time it looked great. And okay, fair enough, he's passionate about those movies, so who am I to tell him otherwise? But the fact that you're not getting movies like Aliens or like Terminator, like Terminator 2, like True Lies, even the Titanic, which isn't one of my favourite movies, but the sheer scale in which, you know, those movies were made, the fact that, you know, every 3 or 4 years we get an Avatar movie and that's what James Cameron is doing, is such a shame to the movie world, because he, you know, he has such a distinctive style of filmmaking, such a way of telling stories.
It's so muscular and kind of just, I don't know, the terminology of the kind of, or just the terminology of science and technology and machinery, and it takes it very seriously in the right way. It treats, you know, the preoccupations and the themes of science fiction and technology with, you know, real reverence and real importance. And you know the term Skynetting is a thing now. We're talking about AI and the day when they suddenly get sentient and we all get fucking Skynetted. You know, he's I know that they are not necessarily his original ideas. Oh, you know, Skynet is of course something that he's coined, but the idea that we're all going to be taken over by machines, I mean, that's been in sci-fi since forever. But he has popularized these terms. He's popularized these ideas.
He's definitely like catapulted them into pop culture.
And the folly of technology, and you know how we might be kind of appropriating it for the wrong intentions, and it's just going to butt us in the ass. I think nearly every James Cameron film has got a nuclear bomb in it, except for Titanic.
I don't know if you can get that in there, really.
But you know, True Lies even revolves around it. So yeah, there is, you know, let's nuke the site from orbit, and there is something, and you know, Terminator, you know, the whole turning point of that whole narrative is the, you know, the day, well, it's Judgment Day and the release of nuclear bombs. So yeah.
And yeah, he's able to take those subjects and make, you know, bring them to a mass audience, because, you know, they are quite niche subjects that, you know, I find them interesting, but I'm a bit of a sci-fi, you know, fan anyway. But to put that into, you know, into movies which made lots and lots and lots of money, and you know, means that lots and lots of people went to it and went to see these, and at some point got on board with those ideas or the discussion of those ideas, more so than if this was, you know, one of those niche, you know, nobody's really heard of these sci-fi movies type things. And there's a great example of James Cameron's style of filmmaking. And it's referenced in the scene where Hicks is teaching Ripley, you know, how to use the pulse rifle. And I think it's Gail Ann Hurd who says it, the producer of this movie. She basically says that, you know, only James Cameron could take something incredibly violent and macho and make it so intimate. And there is that, you know, there is that intimacy to the relationship between Hicks and Ripley when he's going through, and how you use this pulse rifle. It is such a intimate, romantic, sexual moment when in a movie where it's all about, you know, killing bugs and you know, I think a lot of people would look at this movie and think it is just essentially a movie version of Bill Paxton's character, if you know what I mean, where it's all just like, it's men fucking around with big guns, killing aliens, and it kind of is that in parts, but there is so much more to this movie that, for me, is why I return. Those action sequences are great, but I return because I want to see the relationship between Ripley and you.
Yeah.
I want to see the relationship between Hicks and Ripley. I want to see those elements. Even this sort of, the political and hierarchical elements of the Colonial Marines, where everybody sits in their place. One of the greatest lines or put down lines is when Private Hudson is saying to Vasquez, have you ever been mistaken for a man, Vasquez? And she's like, I don't know. Have you? It's such a great put down, and it just totally immediately emasculates Private Hudson, and it's perfect. Absolutely perfect.
I like this sequence as they're all just getting everything ready, and that militaristic drum kind of score in the background. We see pretty much all of the Marines, all doing bits and pieces. Oh no, it's not quite this bit. It's just before they drop. Sorry. But no, we very quickly get a sense of all of these characters. I love that. Well, apart from Wierzbowski and Crow, who I inordinately fascinated with. Every time I watch this film, I love that those two characters are just there to be killed off, but I'm just fascinated by whenever they're there. But every single Marine every single one of them has got a distinct personality. They were all given free rein to personalize their costumes and kind of add art and kind of graffiti and mementos to their costume, which has gone down in fan lore, basically. But yeah, they've all, there's stereotypes. There's the unhinged ones like Drake and Vasquez. There's, the cowardly one with Hudson. There's, the cool, calculated one with Hicks, and, all that. And, they're all very, very macho, but they're all so distinct. And a lot of them have got arcs as well. They've got character. Vasquez, Gorman has got a brilliant character arc.
100%.
Hicks, I think, well, he's just this sturdy presence all the way through. Arguably doesn't really change. He's the same he is at the beginning as he is at the end, but he is this kind of mellowness throughout the entire thing. Michael Biehn's performance is great. I love that Michael Biehn is just key to all three of Cameron's 80s kind of masterpieces, I would say. Terminator, The Abyss, and Aliens. That triumvirate, and Michael Biehn's at the center of all of them. Yeah, and so you very, very swiftly get used to these characters, and you kind of grow to love them. You really, really do. And you imagine, you get the sense that they've been on like a dozen other missions together before, and they've got this brash brio because they've obviously been victorious in every skirmish they've ever been in.
Yeah, there's a real camaraderie to their relationships with each other, and that hierarchy that they have is built just as much on respect for each other as it is on jockeying for, going up a rung in the ladder.
Yeah.
It's a real testament to, again, the attention to detail, to not just have these be interchangeable parts where it doesn't really matter who's who. Nobody has an arc. They're just there. That, it's not about these particular characters. It's about the aliens. So let's just get to the aliens. They're just there to be narrative devices to get, awesome kills on screen. And there is an element of that. There are some awesome kills on screen, but putting actual character arcs and actual, individualism to each character means that whenever you watch this movie, I remember when I first watched this, and I was immediately drawn to Vasquez. There was something about her, sort of her energy on screen, just meant I was just addicted to it. And then I watched it again, shortly afterwards, and then was like, actually, I really like Private Hudson and his kind of bumbling kind of, because I think it's easy to dismiss him because he is always, the butt of the joke, and he is always, wise cracking. But obviously, he's there because he's incredibly skilled at what, nobody's here, just to make up the numbers.
Yeah, he seems like the kind of annoying brother of the group, sort of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, he does end up, he actually. Well, we love him. We love Hudson. And he ends up kind of asking some quite pertinent questions and, like, in a very panicky way, saying, like, we're in deep shit here and, we got to do this, we got to do that. And, it just comes off as annoying and unhelpful. But yeah, I mean, I remember very, very quickly, like, Hudson and Vasquez are the ones that kind of make it through the lowest ranking ones that make it through the initial onslaught. Basically, pretty much everyone else dies. So that got me fascinated with the minor characters, and especially Crow and Wierzbowski. And I had a T-shirt printed once. I think it kind of wore off, but I got a T-shirt that said Wierzbowski and Crow are down. And one person in my life, when I was at a screening of Die Hard at, I think, the Odeon in Brighton, I took my jacket off and turned around to get comfy and to sit down, and there's this one guy a couple of rows back saw it and did the kind of rock side and went, yeah, like that. It's like, yeah, I made it. Somebody gets it. Yeah, Wierzbowski and Crow. But I don't know what it is, but it's just like, because the initial action scene in the nest where 5 or 6 of them just get killed outright. So Frost gets lit up, doesn't he, and goes over the balcony and falls, and the ammunition that he's carrying explodes. And that is where, when I was a kid, and it was all on VHS, and I was, kind of like trying to figure out who was who. Who is Dietrich? Which one's Crow and which one's da, da, da. And so there's a bit where Hicks kind of in slow motion kind of pulls Wierzbowski back from the balcony so he doesn't get caught in the explosion and brings him round. And then out of nowhere, Crow comes along and he gets caught in the explosion and he's killed. And it took me a long time to figure out who was who in that sequence, because I thought he was pulling Hudson out the way, because for that split second he's got that kind of, it looks a little bit like Hudson, and then Crow in profile looks a little bit like Hicks, and this is very minutiae, very kind of sad, geeky sort of thing, but I couldn't figure out who. For a while I thought, oh, Hicks has been blown up and that sort of stuff, and now it's pretty clear. But I was fascinated with the monitors as well, with their names on, and pretty much all of them as well, their initial. So it says Hudson W. So their initial of the character is the actor's first initial as well. So Vasquez J for Jeanette Goldstein, etc. So that kind of fascinated me with it. And it got to the point where there is actually out there a website called Wierzbowski Hunters. People dedicated to spotting the very few frames or seconds where Wierzbowski is actually on screen. So you glimpse him when Ripley knocks Bishop's dinner out of his hand and everyone turns back, he's right there. There's a bit, in the nest just as Hicks walks past with his shotgun, and there's literally a website dedicated to where the hell is Wierzbowski, and you don't even see exactly what happens to him in his death scene. He just crumbles away and screams, and he's like, what's going on with him? Don't even see the poor guy.
And the fact that there's a website dedicated to that kind of just shows how much this movie resonated with people, where a character who is barely seen gets his own website.
Yeah.
There's a playfulness in that. But again, it goes back to the fact that this movie is just, I don't think I know anybody who hasn't had a period in their life where they've been obsessed with aliens.
Yeah.
Or at the very least, any person who loves movies. Everybody's had that moment where they've gone, I'm really into aliens. Mine came when I was a teenager, and I saw this before I saw the original Alien. It was on Channel 4 one evening.
That's correct.
I turned on, I think about 20 minutes in, so I missed the kind of opening, and I think I turned on just before they land on LV 426.
Yes.
So just at the point where the Colonial Marines are being introduced, and immediately I was like, "Who are these guys?"
Yeah.
Okay, these guys are crazy. I'm in love with you know, with all of them, you know. And so beyond that point, it was then a case of, right, I'm going to get all the movies, I'm going to watch all the movies, and you know, just at the time where I've just got my own DVD player and my own somewhat disposable income as a teenager, and I, you know, buying movies, and this was one of the first ones I was like, I've got to get Aliens because I want to watch that again.
Yeah.
You know, and it's as I say, nobody I know has not had an Aliens moment where they've gone, you know, they're obsessed with it. And it's such a movie which is, not only is it a masterpiece, but it's entertaining.
Yes,
like
agreed.
there's those movies which are, you know, they're great, but they're not you have to be in the right mood for, or you know, it's not a particularly entertaining movie. It's just, you know, you can see the artistry. Whereas here, as I say, it's so easy to dismiss all of the artistry and all of the effort and work that's gone into it, because it's just such a sit down, 5 minutes in, boom, I'm having a great movie night. You know.
Yeah, I mean, I was born in 81, so I was born into the VHS era, and when I started watching films like this around, well, I was in junior school, so 7 or 8, even earlier. Alien and Aliens were synonymous because they were out when I was beginning to be sentient for films. So I watched them both in quick. I can't remember the very first moment I saw these films, but as I've alluded to in other episodes of our podcast, I had a childminder who was very free with what we watched on the TV, and there was an older brother there in the house who had all these videos, all the good stuff, all the 18 rated stuff, and I watched them all. And I'm so thankful for that. Really, really am. I wouldn't dare do that with my own kids, of course. But yeah, I watched these all, you know, it just changed everything, really. So they are synonymous. And this was before I was really paying attention to who directed what and who Ridley Scott was and who James Cameron was. And
you know, times when movies were kind of just movies.
Yeah, exactly. So they were one of the same. And before I was paying attention to style and aesthetic and that sort of stuff, I mean, these two films were just synonymous. They might as well have been the same film. Yeah, Alien and Aliens. It just made sense. And I think that goes to show just how James Cameron made a film that and you know, in that documentary we both recently watched, he was reverent to the original, but he was insistent on doing his own thing. And that's exactly because, you know, like you say, if Aliens was Alien 2, it'd probably be forgotten about by now, perhaps, you know, because it would have been the same thing.
It would have been that movie that people would have gone, it's not quite as good as the original.
If it was literally the same thing on a spaceship in space and that was it, you know, that might have been the end of it. But no, this expands and enriches the mythos, and it seems like a very natural and logical step in the story and in the wider narrative and the wider progression of a franchise.
You know, that is such a key thing, because I think obviously sequels, you know, since the dawn of time have always been a little bit, you know, hit and miss, more so miss. And I think one of the reasons amongst many why this works is it feels like a natural development of the story. So many times we just get a rehash of what's already happened, or it's the same thing in a different setting with different characters. Whereas this feels like you could watch this back to back and it feels like a second episode of a series.
Agreed.
You know, it doesn't feel like we've had this massive departure or a massive step back, you know, and it's interesting because these films are so different whilst also being so similar. And I think there was you know, they came to James Cameron at a time where, you know, he even says it with the crew who had worked on Alien, who worked on this as well, where he goes over to Pinewood Studios and he's got all of these English workers and he's like, I'm the guy who directed the Terminator, and
Yeah.
they're all like, not seen it, not interested. And, if this had come after Terminator 2, for example,
Yeah.
let's say in a crazy world where he gets to Terminator 2 without aliens, then I think it becomes a different movie again, because there isn't that defiance almost of him going, still trying to find his way as a filmmaker. And, in those formative years where it's your movies and not somebody else's movie, pushing against that, that idea of what this movie should be. And it's so important to have James Cameron of 1986 rather than James Cameron of 1993 or 1999, for example. And as I said at the top of the episode, it's such a dangerous move to take a movie like Aliens and go, well, I'm going to do something different.
Yeah.
Because Alien has worked. That's what people like. That's what people want. And to come along and go, well, let's do a Vietnam movie in space is a very, very bold move, and take somebody with a lot of gumption to actually pull that off without going, okay, well, they want a bit more horror in this. Okay, well, let's make it a bit more like this.
It's funny to know that James Cameron was writing Rambo 2 at the same time he was writing Aliens, funnily enough, and quite different kind of approaches to a similar sort of genre and war movie type thing. Do you know what's just occurred to me? What makes this even better, this film, is there's never a conversation between characters about their previous lives. There isn't. Now, in the special edition, of course, have you put on the special edition?
I've put on the theatrical edition.
Ah, interesting. So, we'll talk about that. But yeah, apart from with Ripley, the death of her daughter in a scene that's only in the special edition and was deleted for the theatrical edition, much to Sigourney Weaver's annoyance, I know that. And that little exchange later, which is also only in the special edition, where Ripley and Hicks exchange first names. I mean, it's 10 seconds. But there is never... The conversation is always about the plot. And the characters are still really, really rich, and you still love them, and you still think you know them. There are lots of other films where the pace lags because they feel the need to get to the heart of the character and have some kind of dramatic conversation about each other and who they are and what they've got to be. There's none of that in Aliens. It's really streamlined in that way, but you still really care about these characters.
And it's such a... I don't even know why that somehow works in this movie, because I guarantee you there would be an element where if that happened in a movie today, where I would be like, well, there's nothing, I don't know anything about the character. It's all, not that it's exposition here, but it's all, the lines they serve a function more than anything else.
Yeah.
We're not as you say, getting to the heart of characters, finding out what their motivations are.
I mean, nowadays, the bit where Gorman goes back to rescue Vasquez, that would have been a whole big deal in a modern film.
Yeah.
Slow motion. They would have looked in each other's eyes. There would have been a real kind of lament for his actions, and they would have, made explicit what he was doing and kind of talk about he's done it, he's the leader we always needed, something like that. There is just none of that in this, but it is still a wonderful moment where Gorman pops the grenade and they just put their hands on it, and they know instinctively. They've been at each other's throats. Nobody likes Gorman, but he goes back and he does what he's supposed to do, and he knows in that moment that Ripley and Newt, who are the most important here, they've got a much better chance if they go ahead with Hicks.
Yeah.
And who's heavily armed and has got combat experience, and who they actually like and respect. They know that they don't like and respect him, and he knows in his heart that he's he is, at least his ineffectiveness and his inadequacy and his inexperience has helped to lead to the decimation of this entire team. His decisions have led to kind of most of them being killed. They were all quite blasé about what could possibly be in that nest or around the corner. They don't realise it till it's too late, but it's ultimately his thing. But he just go, and that's it. Go. We've got to go back. Where's Vasquez? And it's immediate. And that immediate decision has so much more impact and shows so much more trust in the audience.
Yeah.
Than a really dramatic kind of, scene full of bathos would have just kind of, made it all syrupy. And that, I've never kind of, I think I've known, in the back of my head that, that, but I've never actually sat and thought and verbalized and realized that, there isn't any stuff. Hey, look, there's a bit with Newt, of course. That's fair enough. But there is kind of, it's all about the plot and why she's there and what it means for them going forward.
And I think it's interesting because, again, another element about this movie that I feel like in other movies I would hate is that relationship between Newt and Ripley.
Newt's a great character.
Ordinarily, I would hate that character.
Yeah.
But the way it's handled and the fact that we know that Ripley, whilst in the theatrical version we don't know for definite that she had a daughter who is now older than her, but it's treating the audience with respect and going, they'll figure this out, rather than going, they need to be spoon-fed this.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that the director's cut, which has that scene in there, which was taken out, meant that we were being spoon-fed.
No.
But it's a lot more pushed to the forefront of this is the story we're telling, when actually one of the things I love about this movie is that the stories it tells across the runtime are, if you want to pick up on them, you can, but you don't have to. They're not pushed to the forefront in a way where it's this is what we want you to feel right now. And a lot of that comes down to, I mentioned, making a Vietnam movie in space.
Yeah.
And I think it's whenever I find with war movies, one thing they do is they make big moments of those heroic moments that would have happened.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that those moments in real life or whatever aren't heroic, but what I like about movies that do it like this is it highlights the fact that in every war, in every battle, in every conflict, there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of moments like this that are just completely brushed under the carpet, completely almost ignored, not because of any malice or anything like that, but just because that's what happens in these situations. And that moment between Gorman and Vasquez is one of those moments where it's we know what's happening, but we've got people we can probably help by doing this. We can give some people some time.
Yes.
And it could have been this whole, as you say, slow-mo, looking into each other's eyes, a good minute and a half where we're going, is Gorman going to do the right thing, or is he going to is he going to stick it to the company, or is he going to go back to the company with open arms? And
it's not laziness. It's not that they couldn't have done that. It's just James Cameron knows. And again, in the documentary we just watched, I mean, all the actors said the same thing, and that the character was right there on the page. It was all on the page. They didn't need to improvise. They did, inevitably there were some ad libs here and there, but they didn't need. All of them kept, Mark Rolston, etc. They kept on saying it was all on the page. So they were, from the beginning, these characters are set in stone. And when they're set in stone, and when you've got amazing actors, and all of these actors, pretty much all, have gone on to be, be in plenty of things, and a lot of them became household names, and a lot of them were in more James Cameron films. When you've got actors like this, and they were really hungry actors. They were really, this is at the beginning of careers, they were all American actors who were working in London, because they've just made it cheaper. So they, because they were filming at Pinewood, they film around London, and so it was just more cost efficient to cast American actors who were in London. So they all had that in common. There was all this camaraderie going on, and they were kind of almost a lot of them were living hand to mouth, in a lot of ways. And so there is this real tenacity and voraciousness to these characters and the performances. So Cameron obviously had complete trust in them all, and they are all brilliant performances from the smallest to the biggest. They are brilliant, ruthlessly efficient performances.
Yeah, I think the only odd one out in that, I believe, is Michael Biehn.
Yeah, of course,
and that's because he replaced James Remar. For those people who don't know, James Remar was caught buying cocaine from an undercover police officer.
Yes,
and the way they got him out of going to prison was saying, "Right, you're going to be deported."
Yeah.
And Michael Biehn was, shipped in. Obviously, worked with Cameron on the Terminator.
Yeah,
and there is a couple of shots where you see the back of James Remar.
Yeah,
I've always think that James Remar would have brought a much more.
He had a kind of this sort of kind of malicious glint in his eye.
Yeah,
he was
he secretly loves this shit.
He was in the Warriors. He was the bad guy. He was doing a lot of Walter Hill stuff.
For me, he's Dexter's dad. But obviously, that's quite a bit after what he was known for at the time.
Was it the original 40 Hours or another 48 Hours where he was bad guy?
Original 48
Right,
Hours,
so that. Yeah. I think Southern Comfort as well. I think that might have been after this.
Yeah, so he has that unhinged aspect.
Which wasn't needed.
I think Michael Biehn brings that calmness and that not comforting, but the reassuring aspect to Hicks's character that I think makes him because we've already kind of got the loose cannons. We've already kind of got, Hudson is a loose cannon in terms of, running his mouth. Ralston and Private Drake and Vasquez are kind of, they want to get to the action. We've got those characters. So I think another
to me, the action is the juice.
Yeah. If we'd have had another character similar to that, that's perhaps when the general dynamics of the group would have perhaps not been quite on point as it as it is.
I love that Hicks is so respected. He's clearly straight down the line. He clearly will do whatever he needs to do for his men and women, for the people that he's in charge of. I mean, apart from Apone, he is kind of, he's respectful of Apone but they look up to him so much, and I love that he's got these good, honest qualities that might have been seen as a bit, kind of sad and drippy, but they're not here. He's really respected by all the Marines.
I think in the 80s zeitgeist of movies, obviously we have Ripley as the heroine of the overall Alien franchise. So we could have understandably had a Schwarzenegger, Stallone, Van Damme type character in that role who would have brought that element to the piece. And I think it was a shrewd and very apt move from James Cameron to write that character, not be that that guy who goes in and saves the day.
Yes,
Because the one thing that this movie and the original Alien has is that yes, they survive, but nobody really saves the day. There is no, there's before and there's after.
Yeah,
there isn't a point where people go, well done, high five, and lots of people get killed.
Yeah,
lots of people get some serious trauma.
Yeah,
as we know from this movie and from Alien 3 and beyond. And I've always loved those movies where there are those shades of grey, where it's not, definitive good and evil. The fact there's a line from Ripley where it says, the one thing that, who I'm paraphrasing, but essentially who's more evil, they're not fucking each other over for to make money or to make a buck.
A goddamn percentage.
In reference to Burke's character, because at no point does anybody trust him. As soon as he's on screen, every movie lover or not movie lover goes, well, I don't trust this guy.
Yeah.
There's something about him. Maybe
it's because he's dressed like he's about to go on a fishing trip, I guess.
Yeah. He makes a very good point where he says he looks like he should be standing next to Marty McFly. And he very much looks like that. But maybe it's the collar up when,
Yeah. That is the only thing that slightly dates the some of the hairstyles. And in the special edition, all the stuff on Hadley's Hope, that little kid on the tricycle, the costume and the hair and everything on there is very, very 80s. But other than that, no, it's not at all. It feels timeless. It really does.
Yeah, he's the one who kind of grounds you back. This was made in the 80s. Yeah. It's the hair and it's the bomber jacket.
And probably for people who remember Paul Reiser from My Two Dads and all those sorts of things.
Yeah, and it's interesting that they chose him because he was a comedian before this. Had he done Beverly Hills Cop by this point?
Not too sure.
I think he goes on to do that because when was the first Beverly Hills Cop?
Was it 84? There's Wisbowski.
Yeah, was he in the first one?
Yeah.
Was he only in the second one? Was he in the first one? I think he was, wasn't he?
Yeah. He was in the first one, yeah.
Yeah, so he, not a movie star by any stretch of the imagination, more well known for being a stand-up comedian.
Yeah. There's Wisbowski there. What's funny is that every now and then Apone says, come on, Wisbowski, and come on, Crow, and they're not even on camera. Yeah. It's just to remind you that they're there. Yeah. There's a bit earlier where they all get up out their sleeping pods, and there's some background ADR of Apone saying, come on, Crow, come on, Ski. He calls Wisbowski Ski. Come on, Ski, on your feet. As if they're still lounging around. As he says that, Trevor Steedman, who's playing Wisbowski, is walking in front of the camera. It's like, they don't even know who these two characters are. I love it.
There is a drinking game in here somewhere, isn't there?
Yes.
Every time you spot him, take a shot.
Most sober game you could ever play.
I love Apone. I think he brings that, that drill instructor attitude to.
It's his death that really kind of like. People are like, oh shit, they really mean business now. Yeah,
he's the one.
Anyone could go.
He's the one up until that I've kind of really, really wanted to see more of. More so than any other character. Watching it the other day.
Yeah,
there's just something about his.
Yeah,
his on-screen charisma.
Yeah,
that is just.
Again, they've all got respect for him, even though he's a bit of a ball buster, and a stereotype that the cigar chomping sergeant. But no, there is this kind of. I like the way he kind of looks at Ripley as she's getting sorted in the power loader, trying to show them that she's useful, and the way he looks at her is very interesting. Actually, there's a lot to read into that. It's like, I've got an ally here. She isn't just some,
Because so many films have done that trope of it being, here's the outsider coming into us and accompanying us. Essentially they'd have gone down the, the Burke character arc route of, okay, now this character's got to prove themselves. But within seconds... Yeah, less than very at the most a couple of minutes. She's proved herself that she knows what she's doing.
Yes,
she's not here to just make up the numbers. She's not here as a chaperone. She's here to to assist and to help.
Yeah.
And this film probably started a lot of tropes.
Yeah,
but didn't follow the age-old tropes that we've seen thousands and thousands of times. It's the only trope it did kind of follow really is that it takes quite a while before we see an alien.
Yeah, true.
It's that thing. It's the Jaws thing. It's the the thing that happened in Aliens where first hour, the first whatever you see glimpses, you see bits and bobs, but you don't really see. It's this elephant in the room or xenomorph in the room where it's this thing that is lurking somewhere, and then when you finally do see it, it just appears from the shadows.
Yeah,
and
I love the way that the aliens blend into the set design and this kind of biomechanical sort of chamber that they're in here in the nest. It just blends so well, and you can understand that they would miss it. And here's the sequence that I'm just fascinated with, I
think, going back to bold choices, but in a movie where we know what the xenomorph looks like because we've seen it in the first movie, where people probably do just want to see more xenomorph, to have a movie come along and still go, we're going to make you wait a bit more, make you wait a little bit more. And then when you do find, it's still glimpses, it's still bits and bobs, it's still not, straight away. Even when you do see it, it's very quick blink and you miss it, and then there's a big burst of flames where the oxymoron of Frost dying by fire.
See, that was the bit where I thought the guy running up was Hicks, but no, it was basically, and there's Crow all of a sudden out of nowhere, and then he's dead. Crow's dead. Yeah.
A literal blink and you miss it moment from Crow.
And here, and like, why have a couple of extras to kill them off? They've obviously beefed up, they want to have carnage, but it's always like, well, do something with Bowser. You don't just kind of pan across to some fire and a pillar and hear him screaming and that's it. It's like, do something imaginative with him. But yeah, tipping, interestingly, the guy who plays Crow, he was like quite a legend in the stunt, he's a stuntman. He's quite a legend apparently in the stunt world. I wish I knew a bit more, but he died unfortunately about, I think, in the 90s in a failed parachute jump. Poor guy. But he was also in an episode of Bottom, and I'm obsessed with. I won't finish that. The Rick Mail, Aid Edmondson sitcom Bottom. In the burglary episode, he's a masked burglar in that.
I'm gonna have to go back and watch that.
You don't see his face, but they go, and there goes Apone. Yeah,
and Apone is a character who you don't expect to get.
No.
If anything, you expect Private Hudson to get it quickly. Even Vasquez or Private Drake, because they're the ones who, typically are in those roles quite quickly. Where he's going to get it because he's the wisecracker. Or they're going to get it because they're the ones who really want this. They're the ones who want to go into battle. And then as soon as they do, they're dead. But actually,
you get with Hudson and Vasquez, you get to the point you really don't want to see them die. You really want to, that they're gonna, but you really don't want to see them perish because you just grow to really, really love them. They've all this very fraternal sort of brother-sister sort of relationships here and there. It's great.
And I think, for me, the power of that scene is the cutbacks to Gorman's reactions to everything. You see the beads of sweat and the sheer panic on his face.
He's great, William Hope, in this. Yeah,
he's so unlikable. For being such, a sloping shoulders type authority figure where
pencil pusher.
He's in that role because he's kissed the right arse. And he's probably got a dad in the right place or a family member in the right place, and immediately he's thrust into this this situation which everybody's in other than Ripley of what are you we don't really know what we're getting ourselves in for, as as Bill Paxton says, is this going to be another bug hunt, which implies very much like, these xenomorphs in their eyes are just insects that they're going to squash with the sole of their boot. And it very, very quickly becomes apparent to everybody on that team, this isn't just any, another bug hunt. This is life or death. And for most of them, unfortunately, death. And what makes this movie so good is attention to detail, and finding out how he made all of the gunfire look amazing. Is he interspersed a single frame of just white. And playing that at full speed means you get these flashes of white that are milliseconds long, but it just adds to that element of like, this is carnage, this is war. This is man versus alien.
Well, he took that into The Abyss. The Abyss has got my favourite punch in any movie. the Hammer, where the character of Hammer. So Michael Biehn and Ed Harris are having their fist fight in the Moonpool area, and Michael Bihn's got the chain wrapped around Ed Harris's neck. He's about to win, and then Hammer from behind him, who's swum in from out of nowhere, big burly guy with a beard, said, "Hey!" and Biehn turns round and whack punches him, and you see the shot from behind, and the stuntman, he jumps up and whips his head back, and it's a beautiful shot, a beautiful punch, lovely editing. And just as the punch hits, there is that, you can pause it, there is that single frame of white, just pure white, and it that fast, it just makes you blink and kind of jolt your head back a little bit and go, ooh. Yeah, so yeah, I actually use that every now and then in film studies when I'm teaching.
And as someone who's made a couple of movies in university, wouldn't have even occurred to me if I was doing Gunfire to do that.
No, it's genius.
And it's genius, and it shows the difference between somebody having a quick dab at filmmaking to somebody who really understands the craft. I will say, as you mentioned, The Abyss, I have it on DVD. I've not seen it, and I need to go and watch it.
You've never right? Well, whoa, okay. So you've never watched the motion picture The Abyss?
No,
I've got to be here when you do, dude.
We will watch that together. It's always been.
Did you get the new 4K?
No, but I probably will do.
Yeah, so I did. I mean,
only have it on.
I've been waiting years for that. And they won't bring it out on 4K in this country because of the drowned rat scene, which we won't go into here. Maybe we'll do an Abyss thing. Well, maybe we'll do that in a few weeks. Perhaps we'll do that as a podcast. But yeah, you can't get... So yeah, when that came out, me and a few of my friends, we were poised, ready to pre-order it because they've released it in the US. So the 4K special and the theatrical cut and the special edition all in one. Yeah, and we poised, and we got it quick. I think it was about 35 quid, but we didn't hesitate to pay for it. But a lot of people swiped that up, bought dozens of copies, and almost instantly were selling them at incredibly inflated prices. So I dread to think what it's worth now. Well, maybe it's calmed down now and it's perfectly reasonable to buy it. But yeah, that's one we've been waiting for a long time. Held up by the BBF, well, not by the BBFC, but they won't budge on that animal cruelty idea. So yeah,
but I mean, yeah, it's every time I watch Aliens, there is, like obviously we've done a few episodes on this podcast now, and you try and figure out how bits and bobs are done in quite literal practical terms, but also in terms of the vision or the approach to certain things. And sometimes, every now and again, you come across a movie that you just can't quite put your finger on, what makes it so special. And there's a lot you can talk about, as we're doing, because, this is a podcast, about what makes this movie so special. But there is this kind of intangible thing that everything, it's just a phrase, but everything just clicked.
Yeah.
Everything just worked in tandem with each other, which sometimes, a lot of that comes down to luck and, when the movie came out, what people were wanting. If you made Aliens in 2025, would it hit in the same way? Who knows? Because it's a different world. It's a different, moviegoers are wanting different things than what they were wanting in 1986. But the fact that we ended up with this, and I feel like this is the movie that really cemented Ripley as the female heroine of, the standard bearer of, if you're going to do a movie with a female heroine, this is what you need to be punching upwards towards.
Yeah.
it was almost a bit of a twist in the original where you think Dallas is going to be the one because he's kind of positioned as the...
Yeah, and Tom Skerritt had top billing as well.
Exactly. So you think, oh, he's going to survive. He's going to be the one who saves the day. And then it's just not that, and it becomes about Ripley. This is the movie that kind of was like, okay, well, now I'm the star. Quite literally, she negotiated a bigger fee for, she wanted to be paid as much as, if you had Schwarzenegger or Stallone or whoever in that role in a similar movie, what would they be paid? She fought for that, and rightly so.
Yeah.
But this is the movie where she kind of said, you know what, I'm top billing now. You can sell a movie with me on the billboard.
Yeah.
You can, this is my time to. Well, this was the movie that convinced people, I think, rather than, But this was her, taking that step and going, if this doesn't work, then perhaps I'm not top billing. Perhaps you can't bank on me. But if it does work, you will be able to bank on me. And now, many a movie has been sold entirely on the fact it's got Sigourney Weaver in.
Yeah,
Copycat is one that, is a bit of a pants movie, but it works so much better because it's got Sigourney Weaver.
Yeah.
That's just one that's, off the top of my head, but there are so many others.
Do you know what? At that time when I watched it, it never, I don't know why, but it never occurred to me and my friends that it was never a thing that Ripley was a woman. It just wasn't. It never occurred to us. Never occurred to us. Now, when we were reenacting Aliens in the playground and playing, everyone wanted to be Hudson, everyone wanted to be Hicks, that sort of stuff. So nobody was ever Ripley because we liked reenacting all the war bits, and, Ripley only kind of gets into it in terms of action in the finale. But it just never occurred to none of us were looking at Ripley thinking, oh, why isn't that Sylvester Stallone? None of us. It just didn't occur to us. And I think it's because, and you look at Terminator and Terminator 2, and, well, to a lesser extent, The Abyss, Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio's character, perhaps a little bit more stereotypical, but you look at them and you don't look at those, they're not singled out or elevated or sublimated because they are women. The characters are frosty towards Ripley in Aliens, not because she's a woman, but because they doubt her story, that she's a civilian compared to them, she's an outsider. It's not because she's a woman. And Dietrich and Ferro and Vasquez are right in the middle of it, just like all the male Marines. There's in the boardroom scenes at the beginning, with Dan Lewin, and kind of they're all kind of going over her story. They don't disbelieve her because she's a woman. They've got dollar signs in their eyes. It could be anyone, but she is beneath them, not because she's a woman. And there are vocal women on this board, but it's because because they've cost her so much money, $300 million in adjusted dollars or whatever it is, minus payload, of course. Yeah, it's because it's class rather than whether she's women. And as Ripley through the film, as the shit hits the fan, she steps up because of the characteristics she shows in Alien. She is the one that won't let her colleagues back on the ship because Kane has got parasite attached to his face. There are quarantine rules. She doesn't let them in. And it's Ash, the android, who lets them back in. And she is the stick in the mud in the original. But again, it's not like, oh, she's such a bitch. It's, this is our second in command and this is what she does. It's not because she's a woman, it's because this is what she does.
Yeah.
And now, there is in Alien, the bit at the end where she kind of strips down, I think there's more to it than let's have a look at a semi-naked woman. There's far more to it than that, as it kind of cross-cuts between getting undressed, ready for the sleep home, and cutting back to the alien, which is resting nearby and stretching, kind of opening its jaws and kind of slowly.
It's more about vulnerableness.
It's a vulnerableness. It's a seduction. It's a sexual play. It's a sexual kind of intimidation. But again, I mean, the original Alien was written. It was deliberately written that there was no sex or gender applied to any of the characters.
And the beauty of great characters is that they are almost genderless.
Yeah.
Whereby, I have a real problem with the trope of the damsel in distress female character.
Yeah.
And on the flip side of that, I dislike the trope of it being, oh, this is a strong, in inverted commas, female character.
Yeah.
And by that, they mean, they just act like a man.
Yeah.
And what I like about Ripley and other actually strong female characters is that they're not female characters, they're just characters. And that you're not, at no point are you questioning their gender.
No.
or you're not applying any kind of prerequisite with them because of their gender. You're just kind of going, as you say, you didn't, it wasn't even a thought in your head. It was just, that's who's in the movie, great. Rather than it being, oh, that would be great if it was Arnold Schwarzenegger or whoever. And I think most of the time, that's when great characters, come out, is when you kind of forget, oh, who could have been in that role or what could have been in that role. It's just, that's what's in the role and that's what I'm watching.
Yeah, and it's the same in Terminator. I mean, Sarah Connor in the original Terminator, she's a waitress, she's put upon, and she's pretty typical, and it's when the male characters are out of the way. Now they're in the original Terminator, I mean, she has a hard time as a waitress and that sort of stuff, and there are people who are being annoying, but there's no kind of oppressive patriarchal regime on Sarah Connor like there is for Ripley here. The military here, Burke, male, Gorman, male, Dan Lewin, the head of the board, male. Yeah. So there's that. But again, it's not like she's pushing against the patriarchy. She's pushing against incompetence and this assumption that these men have got, the right approach. And, Dan Lewin, is all about money and profit. Burke is a company man and he'll do whatever he's told. Gorman is just ineffectual. He's posing as a leader and he's not. But it's only when all of them are out the way and Hicks is ultimately injured that she tools up, that she puts on the traditionally macho, hyper-masculine coded costume and props. Yeah, as she tools up in the, it's like the equivalent of the Commando scene, where he gets tooled up, like in the, and she puts on the, the kind of the strap with all the kind of the gun bullet strap. What am I trying to say?
The ammo.
The ammo, and loads up the flamethrower and gets her bullets and that, and But again, and if you look at the poster, I mean, you could argue, looks quite, Rambo-esque, but I think that's more to do with the time that the film was made. This is this is to do with action cinema. But it's interesting that on that classic cover, you got Newt and you've got Ripley and you've got the shadow of the Queen. So you got three women, three females on the front here. Yeah,
and considering what we've just said about forgetting the gender of that character and not seeing either male or female, just seeing the character and just seeing Ripley. It's even more surprising that we're able to say that in a movie that is so heavily about maternal instinct.
Well, this is what I was about to say, though. I mean, you've got that, but again, it just doesn't. Yes, you can definitely read the maternal connection, but you know, equally, I mean, again, it was never something for, you know, I was a teenage boy once, and, I watched a lot of action movies, a lot of Schwarzenegger, a lot of Van Damme, a lot of Sylvester Stallone. But, so you would think stereotypically that, tender scenes between a woman and a girl that have, real.
How is a 15-year-old boy going to connect with that?
But it just didn't occur. And I think it just didn't occur because the world that Cameron has built here, just doesn't look at it in that way. They just don't. And equally, I mean, you can look at it as parental, not necessarily, there are plenty of scenes where, hey, Commando, I mean, there's plenty of scenes with Schwarzenegger and his daughter, and he goes and rescues her. Yeah. So, I know a lot of people, unfortunately, won't have had this experience, but, for the most part, people have got parents, I know not in every single situation, but there is that relatability to that. So as a kid, I saw that and it just wasn't a sad, I never fast forwarded through any of the scenes with Newt, and
that's what makes, great movies great, is that it's so easy to kind of question stuff and to analyze stuff and to look into the hidden meanings. And sometimes the best movies you just accept, just get on board with, and that's the situation I'm watching. This is what's happening. Let's go. There is no kind of, other thought when you're watching it. I watched this the other night and I'm looking for bits to talk about and I'm thinking about hidden meanings and stuff because we're going to be doing a podcast on it. We're going to be talking about it. So we need to, for lack of a better term, fill the airways for two and a bit hours. But it's so easy to just sit there and just enjoy and just go along for the ride. And so many movies forget that. So many movies forget that that's the whole point. More often than not, yes, you can tell us a political message, you can tell us a moral message, you can tell us whatever it may be. But ultimately, if we don't enjoy the movie, we're not going to want to watch it again. We're not going to return to it. We're not going to pay our money to go and see it. And so many movies forget that. It's more about, here's the message of the movie. Here's what we want you to take away. And the best movies are able to make you forget what those messages are. But as soon as you want to find a bit more, as soon as you want to scratch beneath the surface, it's right there.
Yeah, I mean, by the end of this, I mean, it's been read as quite conservative with the big C, because you got the survivors are, Ripley, mum, Hicks, dad, Newt, daughter, Bishop, your granddad who needs to use a walking stick, or the dog, the loyal family pet.
Yeah.
So in that way, but again, I mean, you could just as easily look at it as, if you're looking at it as a family unit, I mean, that would have been the nuclear family at the time, But equally, it's the survival of people who've got, the best kind of characteristics, They are protective of the people that they love. They do the right thing. Hicks and Ripley, they have got, good, in inverted commas, moral standards, pretty typical, decent things that we like to kind of think we have, or that we like to find in other people. Courage, decency, a bit of Hicks has got a respect for the chain of command. To an extent, but he also looks out for the people who are under his watch. Ripley really doesn't have much respect for the chain of command. So those two kind of characteristics kind of, that's the best in each other. So yeah, and again, so you could look at it like that way, and again, you could look at it as the restoration of the American nuclear family, the idealized family unit, or also the survival of the fittest, the survival of the best,
the truest form of the survival of the fittest, not necessarily from a physical standpoint, although they are, physically in the prime of their lives.
The characters who die, although nowadays we'll probably celebrate these things, but Vasquez too brash, perhaps, or Hudson too cowardly. Gorman certainly. But they all have heroes' deaths. They all redeem
Gorman,
themselves by the end.
Backbone, not able to stand up for what is right or what is wrong. And as you say, with I think Newt is probably the character who is physically survival of the fittest. In terms of with literally no resources, no combat experience, no life experience, is able to survive based on pure instinct and pure, natural on nature, and the lack of a better term, marriage between Hicks and Ripley in terms of their personal traits, as you say, the fact that Hicks has respect for the hierarchy of the system to a point goes completely up against the fact of Ripley, who did have that. In the first one, as you say, she was the one who was like, we have a chain of command here, we have quarantine, we have these rules in place, and because she's seen how those rules are kind of literally blown out of the airlock when I
like this look, Gorman. In fact, look at that. I like that. Sorry to interrupt, but
I mean, that's very much a shit.
But also, I mean, that these two are kind of bound. Their journeys and their character arcs are kind of bound. They're gonna end up being very important to each other. So Ripley's sin, how you can stick to rules all you want, but when essentially there's a xenomorph after you, all rules go out the window. That feels like a tagline for this time all the rules are out the window. It's a great arc, and I mean I really like. I'm a big fan of kind of generals round the board, around the table sort of scenes, like in The Rock and Broken Arrow, and Hunt for Red October is my favorite one. Just everyone talking about the situation, mostly men.
A distinctly Scottish voice is coming to mind. Think about Connery in a boardroom, isn't it?
And
Outland's another one.
Do you know what? I know I need to see that. Haven't seen that. Have you got it?
I haven't. They've just released it, or
so here
release it.
I might buy it sight and sound, because a lot of people I know have got great things to say about that. It looks good, but I like boardroom scenes. I really do. And at the beginning, I mean, Ripley's talking to a room full of people that she probably used to be. I really like that. So that complete turnaround.
And it goes back to that thing of character arcs in a movie which is essentially an 80s sci-fi action movie. Nobody's really expecting character arcs. Nobody's expecting us to have full circle moments or to have, exploration of character. Nobody's expecting that. They just want to see explosions. They want to see cool death scenes. They want to see a xenomorph, bleed on the floor and it seeps through the flooring. But we get everything all in one, amazing 80s sci-fi package where you see character so much on screen at every point. And as you said earlier, it's so surprising when the script is, for the most part, so plot based. We aren't having big long monologues from characters about how they're feeling, about the way they're battling. We see it, and it's that old phrase, less is more. From a character point of view is so vital, because as I said earlier, that is why I keep returning to this movie, because I know I'm going to get great action scenes. But I know every time I watch this movie, I pick up something more from a different from another character.
This scene in the med bay, this is a genuinely scary scene. Really scary.
Yeah, this is where the tension is like.
Yeah, it's a great idea. You know,
Yeah.
trapped in a room where no one see you, they can't hear you. You know, the sprinkler system and the jump scares, all really carefully done.
And it's when we truly see Burke.
Yeah.
Now this is where we get all of those confirmations about what we think about Burke. All of those things that we probably suspected if we, up to this point.
Yeah.
We see him in, right in front of our eyes where he turns that CCTV camera off. Although it's probably not referred to as a CCTV camera. And, the way it's shot where you get that period of panic where you hear them screaming and then there's, a void of noise and silence when it cuts to the other side of the, that room.
This is where the theatrical cut of Aliens really pays off, because this midsection in the everything between the dropship crash where Pharaoh and Spunkmeyer are killed and this moment is a little the pace slackens.
Yeah,
it's mainly
it's
to do with
bloated.
It's mainly to do with those sentry guns.
Yeah,
which just basically explain how they are able to keep as safe as they are for as long as they are. They set up these remote sentry guns, and they don't last very long. So all of that takes a good 10 minutes. That is not really needed. It could be explained with, let's just seal up a few doors and that will do, but they just go a step further. But that's where the theatrical cut pays off. I missed the stuff with the daughter at the beginning and the extra stuff in the boardroom scene, which you don't get in the theatrical cut. But from this moment onwards, we're here in the medbay. From here on, it does not stop. So we go from this to, the aliens breaking in and Hudson's death, to all the stuff in the tunnels, to, the alien nest, the escape, and then the final confrontation on the Sulaco. All of that stuff starts now and does not stop. It's just breathless. It's great.
Yeah, and it's such an important thing to get the pacing of a movie right, because at 2 hours and 20 minutes, it's quite a long movie anyway. So to add another, I think the director's cut is just under 2 hours 40.
Yeah,
which for an 80s action movie is, by today's standards, that's relatively short. If you've seen, movies like Endgame and, Dark Knight Rises, which are all 2.5 hours plus. 2 hours 40 in the 80s was even more, felt like an entire age.
And they
2 hours 20 was long.
Yeah.
And so...
And it was they wanted to squeeze, and they did this. This is why a lot of films were shorter than they could have been in the 80s, because they wanted to squeeze as many screenings of a film, showings of a film, into a day as possible. And if you got a 3-hour film, then that you maybe can show it 3 times. But if you've got a 2 hour 20 film, you can show it 5 times.
Yeah, and it would have limited where the movie would have run.
Yeah.
Because, as Golan Hurd kind of explores in that Aliens documentary, is, in those days you didn't have multiple screen cinemas, generally speaking. It was one screen and it showed, 3, 4, 5 movies a day max. And, to have a movie go above 2 hours is, just getting to the upper limits of what audiences were kind of, ironically, in a day and age where we say that, the attention span of the average viewer is even shorter.
Yeah.
In the 80s, as you say, movies were 90 minutes.
Yeah.
Thereabouts.
Yeah.
Give or take. And then when you look at the only thing, and this is just more on a slightly pet peeve of mine. So there's an Alien quadrilogy. I think they coined that term themselves.
Yeah.
Which has the original 4, the 3, not the trilogy of Alien movies and Resurrection, because Resurrection is, that boy does that franchise take a nosedive at that point. If it hadn't already depending on how you feel about Alien 3.
I think it's fine as an action movie, as a sci-fi movie even, but
there isn't a single thing I like about the movie.
Okay.
Well, apart from Ron Perlman.
Yeah.
But that's because it's Ron Perlman.
And that basketball shot.
Yeah, which was legit.
Yeah.
Crazy. So in that quadrilogy, the original Alien has, I think, 3 different versions. They have the theatrical cut, the director's cut, and the theatrical extended cut is what it's called.
Right.
Which is actually shorter
Yes.
than the original theatrical.
Yeah.
But it's called the theatrical extended cut.
Right.
Which for years and years and years has been, every time I see a director's cut or extended cut or anything like that, I always go, is it actually longer than the original? Because for years and years and years, that has pissed me off, no doubt. More so than it perhaps should have.
Yeah.
I think it was just the use of the word extended.
Yeah.
So that box set is...
Well, of course, in the 80s, I mean, it was the blockbuster era. So, I mean, films were a lot longer in the day because of vertical integration. Cinema studios also owned cinemas. So you'd go to the Paramount, you'd go to the Warner cinema. They were all, but they put an end to that in the 60s because there was just too much of a monopoly. And then, in the 70s, you had your Deer Hunter, your Godfather. They were all very, very long films that, that was before the multiplex, and that was a real time of new American cinema and very political. So they were often much longer, thoughtful films. But then as, Jaws and Star Wars came along, they realised that they could put a lot of bums on seats, and not long after that came Back to the Future and, Indiana Jones, and they were all sub 2 hour movies.
Yeah.
Just to kind of, just to keep things commercial, to keep things, get as many showings as possible, reinforce these kind of quite typical narratives and genres. Yeah.
And changing the subject slightly, we have just come up to that scene, which is one of the first scenes that I think of when I think of Aliens.
Yeah.
Whenever you mention a movie, in my head, I get a picture of that movie, and the picture that I get is Hicks looking up into the vents and seeing what, in my mind, is hundreds of xenomorphs. In reality, it's about 5.
Yeah.
But in my head, it's hundreds.
Yeah.
And I think that was that feels like a very 2025 sequel thing where we go, okay, in the first one, there was 1. If you were to make Jaws 2 now, there would be 20 sharks. Because that just seems to be the easy way out and go, right, okay, let's just put more of it. Here, it is that, and we see more xenomorphs, but the difference and similarities in this film even go down to things like the colour. The colour I think of when I think of the original Alien is that piercing green. The colour I think of when I think of Aliens is that piercing blue.
Yes, yeah.
In Alien 3, it becomes like a sepia tone.
Yeah,
where all the colour has been, taken out of it.
You could smell that film.
Exactly, yeah. It's very much, and also
so
Alien 3 becomes which famous or recognisable British actor is going to crop up next.
Yeah.
There's, anybody who's watched any kind of British television will go, oh, it's that dude. Oh, it's that dude in pretty much every scene.
Yeah.
But yeah, so, and that again feels very much like a marketing decision. And it wouldn't have been a marketing decision at that point. I think it was just, James Cameron wanting to have a distinctive visual style and chose that kind of, that, as you said at the beginning, where it starts, it has that blue light panning across the screen. But and I remember picking up the kind of standard edition DVDs, and the cover was green for Alien.
Yes,
piercing blue, and that's what I mean. It feels like, oh, they've done that in preparation for when this releases on video or on DVD, and I don't think it would have done at that point. But it feels very much like a marketing thing, but it's
the one thing I forgot to say when we were back in the med lab sequence is, just how brilliant those animatronics are for the face huggers. And how slippery they are in all the sprinkler, the water, and just those bony legs which have got elbows, and you can. Oh, they just look like crabs. And just, watching Alien Romulus recently, they're all CGI. At least, when there's that bit where the fields and fields of them are running after them. And it's just not the same. I sound like such an old bloke, but it's
it's that. I love being able to see the fact that that thing is literally right there in front of them. When you have CGI, it adds an element of you've got to ask the actor to pretend a bit more, whereas when it's right there, and it's one of the things that Sigourney Weaver and James Cameron say about basically each other is that essentially the xenomorph is a guy in an elaborate bin bag, and without Sigourney Weaver's performance, does it become the xenomorph? And Sigourney Weaver says the opposite and says, without it looking terrifying, you don't get my performance. And I think it's that thing of, it's much more difficult nowadays for performers to have to imagine this scary stuff happening to them because they can't physically see something in front of them, or what they are seeing isn't what it is. The classic example is You Shall Not Bounce from The Lord of the Rings, where it was a tennis ball on a stick in front of Ian McKellen. It's that kind of thing. And it's like, that's when you're asking, again, not every performer is an Ian McKellen, where, it just comes across, not every performer is a Sigourney Weaver, where it comes across immediately. And that's okay. That's not a criticism of anybody. It's just one of those things where not everybody has that level of skill, and it's almost recognizing, do we have the actors to be able to do that, or do we need do we need something in front of them that makes them feel that particular thing?
I almost tear up when I watch that bit with Gorman and Vasquez. Just that unspoken humanity and understanding, and despite their differences, they know that this is the only way out, and this is the thing to do. There's no, there's no kind of like objection from either of them. It's
what you said earlier about shooting that in different ways and making it extra slow mo, and
it's those hands, as their hands are almost like one potato, two potatoes, just kind of wrap around that grenade, and it's right in their eyes. It's a beautiful moment
of that they're in this together. They are entwined. But what you were saying about how in different hands that would be a long slow mo shot. The beauty of how he shot that is that the audience, or us watching it, we feel a slow-mo.
Yes.
We slow down the time, even though it's...
Yeah, and if anything, it's like, because it's at the same speed, it's, it's 24 frames a second and there's no slow-mo, you're like, no.
Yeah. Your anticipation is making that scene so much more powerful. Yeah. And speaking of powerful shots... We have the classic scene of Newt I'm calling it a sewer.
Yeah. This is the one moment where I think people get a little bit pissed off with Newt, because the way that she kind of unwraps herself from her coat, and as she slips down that vent, down like the slide, and everyone's like, "Oh, come on!" It's like kind of
it's just almost getting into
put in a bit of effort, girl.
It's almost running upstairs when you're running away from a killer, isn't it? In a horror movie, it's almost getting to that point.
And some people are like, "Oh, well, they go back for Newt. Why didn't they go back for Dietrich and Apone, who are both still alive?" And it's like, well, they were expendable, and Newt, no way.
And to be fair, they are adults. And,
yes.
And not only that, but they're Marines. This is a child.
I guess. But like they said, she's the one who survived without any weapons or training.
And, that shot of the xenomorph coming out of the water.
Yeah.
That's
great.
That is that classic example of, feels like a marketing shot, the thing you're going to sell the movie on, but also we need that kind of shot in the movie.
It's kind of
We
a
need
nightmare
that.
shot. It's like the classic "it's behind you."
Yeah.
And again, seeing the B-roll footage of that sequence in the documentary is quite off-putting. This guy is just in it, kind of gangling around, can barely keep his balance. It's movie magic.
It is just such an amazing shot. And, most movies get like one of those.
Yeah.
Get one of that type of thing. Whereas this movie has like, double digits.
Yeah.
The one that I love is towards the end with the power loader.
Yeah.
Where you see Ripley in the power loader and you just know, oh, it's game on now.
Yeah.
Now we're on even footing here. And we were talking in the 10 of the best practical effects movies, because one of the examples was the chestburster scene from the original Alien.
Of course.
And Jim said a couple of things of like, when you make an Alien movie, there are certain things you have to do.
Yeah.
One thing is you want to see, the alien's blood drip through some metal.
Yeah.
You want to see that. You want to see a chest burst. We see that. And without that, it doesn't, those movies aren't what, aren't what we expect. And it's almost, we're probably getting into the point now where we can probably stop doing those things because we've seen them so often. But for this point in 1986, where you're, coming off of a very, very successful first iteration, the things that we want to see is we want to see a chest burst scene, which we get. And again, it's developed on slightly. So rather than it just being the head come out, you actually see these like little arms and you see like this alien almost like literally like pulling itself out rather than propelling itself out, giving it almost this, this idea that this is actually a sentient creature. It's not just a nightmare. We see at numerous points the alien blood, dissolve metal, and we've just got past the point where Hicks shoots the xenomorph or one of the xenomorphs in the head, and his armor.
That really jumps people. That moment, I like that moment. The way it comes in sideways, the alien through the lift door.
Yeah, and one of the things that this movie obviously gives us that we don't get in the original is we get to see numerous points where xenomorphs are killed. Obviously, it was a single xenomorph in the original, which makes it much more like a Jaws or a King Kong, a monster type movie. But here we get to see the characters be a little bit more successful in their many battles. Obviously, the peril here is that they just keep coming. It is relentless. And as you said, that 10 minutes that they cut out in that lab sequence mean that we do get this relentless, which mirrors the feelings the characters will have where they are being hunted. We see a apex predator or numerous apex predators hunt down and kill their prey. It is just unrelenting and is...
Well, as she's searching for Newt, of course, we got the useful kind of device of the tracker beeping, but also a deleted scene, which wasn't even in the special edition, is where she finds Burke cocooned. And gives him a grenade so that he can kill himself. That never sat right with me either, because just and now that I've seen the documentary, I realise why, but Paul Reiser wasn't particularly comfortable or into that particular scene. And when you see it, he looks like he's literally just standing behind a facade. Like he could just walk around the corner and grab a coffee at any second. So it doesn't look particularly, it's like, well, I mean, when she finds Dallas in the equivalent scene in Alien, he looks like he's just been drained of all life, and the guy's virtually blue, and he just looks horrible. But in this, Paul Reiser's just like, hey, he just looks like he's stepped in from craft services.
Almost like he's about to get a microphone and do some stand-up.
So it just didn't look, and it certainly would have slowed down the pace. He didn't need it.
And I also like the ambiguity about what happens to Paul Reiser. Obviously, we see but we never really know, and
Yeah, I just assumed he got, the spear in the head.
yeah, which
basically.
I think we all kind of assume, but there is that element of, in terms of telling that story about how that, cut the head off the snake, another 3 appear.
Yeah.
That type of thing of, kill the company man. It's okay because
Yeah.
there's 1,000 other men willing to step into that role.
It's like how Charles Dance gets the stinger in the head in
Yes.
in Alien 3. That's what I imagine happened to Burke. That's the other thing that annoys me about Alien 3 is that
Well, I think that's probably
Charles Dance is killed off far too quick, and so is Brian Glover.
That's its biggest weakness,
Mm.
is that Charles Dance is a really interesting character in that movie, and he's gone far too soon.
Yeah,
Whilst I like Charles S. Dutton in that movie, he kind of takes up that role.
Yeah,
we kind of want a bit more Charles Dance in there.
Yeah. Especially when there's like 30 other people that could have been killed off.
Exactly. We're on a prison.
Well, and that's the problem as well. There are far too many characters in there that are just too
of which
indistinct.
are all British TV actors.
Yeah.
So this is really the movie for me that anybody who plays video games, whenever you play a game where you have weapons, this is the movie that makes me always want to get a flamethrower. Something about Ripley with this flamethrower will be eternally cool. There is nothing more that I need from the latter stages of this movie than seeing Ripley with this flamethrower.
Yeah.
It is, even the point where we see the close up of the end of it and she turns it on and the flame just kind of comes out. It's just eternally, it will forever be the thing that I do. If I'm playing the first person shooter, right, where's the flamethrower? And even things that this movie gets right is there is a little bit of the dreaded product placement. One of the things that Hannah said when we first see Ripley in the power loader is, Reebok. Because she's wearing Reebok trainers. Yeah. And I immediately said, ordinarily that would annoy me, but it's done in a way where you're like, she probably would be wearing trainers. It's not like a complete detour where you're going, I know, I need to go and get a Coca-Cola from the station because I am thirsty. It's done in a way where you it's believable, and it's a way probably again of something to relate to in a movie where there's probably a lot here that we're not able to relate to, i.e. face huggers, big spaceships, lots and lots of evil creatures chasing us. We're not able to necessarily relate to that, but we can relate to wearing a nice comfortable pair of Reeboks.
I remember in junior school, we had to write a story that involved a spacewalk. For whatever reason, and I ended up writing a parody of Aliens in junior school. And all the aliens had Horlicks for blood.
If you didn't tell me that, but told me who is this person and describe what you've just described, I'd be like, but that sounds like Gav.
But I made all the aliens had Horlicks for blood. And I renamed so Apone, his character became A Bloke. No, Wierzbowski became Weird Bloke.
Weird, right?
Drake became Duck. Vasquez became Vacuum. And a few other things. And, they killed the alien by... I changed it. And when Bishop rescues them, he actually lands it and, without even thinking, crushes the alien on the platform.
I mean, if 20th Century Fox are listening...
God, I wish I'd kept that. The copyright.
I'm not being funny, but that sounds like a great movie. A great movie parody in a day and age where great movie parodies don't exist.
I also wrote a whole series of underwater alien-esque things like Leviathan and like The Abyss and Deep Star 6. It was called Ocean. I wrote 5 or 6 of those.
Awesome. That's another thing I don't really like about Alien Resurrection, is seeing these xenomorphs swim.
Well, that I didn't write it.
That amongst many, but seeing the xenomorph swimming, for some reason, I don't know why it doesn't sit well with me. I can't even tell you why. There's no logical, based reasoning behind that, other than why.
I can't remember the name of the character, but whoever she is who gets killed in that sequence, that I think that's a very good kind of representation of kind of running out of breath.
Yeah.
That being, I always remember that and getting slightly panicky. That's a good little bit. But yeah, I don't watch it very often, but I'm able to dissociate it from Alien and Aliens and just enjoy it for what it is, I guess. It's just a hugely gory, pretty standard, well, exactly the sort of thing that Michael Wincott would be in, and he is, So, and Brad Dourif.
Yeah. And as we are watching the screen now, we are at the moment where Ripley and you have just come face to face with the alien queen, which is so cool and terrifying. Like, it's that thing. It's almost like the final form trope that we see so frequently nowadays, where you think you're fighting against one thing and then all of a sudden it evolves or takes some drugs or whatever it may be to create its final form. That probably may not necessarily have started with this movie. I can't think of another movie where it kind of has that element, but it's done so well because going back to things that are relatable, and it was one of the things that Sigourney Weaver was initially quite hesitant with, is the fact that this is, we know next to nothing about the xenomorph in the first movie, and now we start to understand a little bit more about its life cycle and about its...
and it's stuck as well. This life cycle idea was from James Cameron, and it's different to what the original Alien proposes, which is that, and as they say in the documentary, they weren't thinking about a franchise. They were just hoping the thing would get made full stop. But in the original, and this is only because, that's quite an 80s shot. But in the original, the life cycle appears to be that, you get cocooned and you kind of morph into a new egg.
Yeah.
And that is what's happening to Dallas and Brett in that deleted scene. And I never, until it was explained to me, I didn't actually understand that was what was happening.
Yeah.
I thought they just looked really dilapidated and that they were covered in goo, they were covered in cocoon secretion.
And I think it's a brilliant example of...
I don't know if I've ever said that word before, secretion. I'll stop. But
I mean... It's not a word I immediately think of when you start talking.
I don't want things to get too racy. Let's continue.
When you walked in this morning, I didn't think Gaz has never said the word secretion before, which would probably say more so about me than anything if I had thought that. But it is a great word, secretion, isn't it? In the right context. But I think that scene and it being cut from the original movie is a brilliant example of how things don't need to be explained. Like the fact that I didn't know prior to watching Aliens, or the audiences didn't know the ins and outs of the life cycle of wasn't a negative thing. It was a thing of, I want to know more about that. Yeah,
and it makes perfect sense. It's a very good system. It makes a lot of sense, kind of biologically and kind of evolutionarily.
Yeah, we're able to kind of identify. They're like insects. There's a queen. It lays eggs. The eggs hatch and then start spawning and start breeding. Whereas I'm never quite not only from the scene, because it's not that clear, but also from a general kind of logical aspect of going, so hang on a minute, so they turn into eggs, they physically turn into an egg.
It doesn't make sense, does it?
It feels a little bit kind of hokey and a little bit like eye roll moment, whereas actually grounding it in something that we are able to kind of not necessarily relate with, but that's probably the wrong word I've been using, but we're able to understand a bit better because it is more natural. Means that I think the thing that makes the xenomorph scary isn't the fact that it's so alien to us. It's more the fact that I probably get more scared thinking about the fact of, there's a queen and it lays all these eggs and then there's hundreds of them and then they, you know, that's what's scary rather than it being an alien creature that I don't understand. So I think it was again another shrewd move from James Cameron, and you know, I seem to be saying that a lot, but I mean, I'm going to say something that perhaps a lot of people might find controversial, but I think this is James Cameron's best movie. As much as I love Terminator 2, I do think that killed the Terminator franchise. Not from a financial aspect, but in terms of the
tone, the
tone and the characters. One of the things I've always disliked about Terminator 2 is the fact that they make the Terminator basically a joke machine.
Yeah.
Oh, he now, it works in Terminator 2, but I remember watching that for the first time because I remember watching Terminator when I was really, really young, far too young to watch it. And it was years and years and years before I watched Terminator 2. And when I did finally watch it, whilst I loved it, my immediate thought was, I don't think the next time I see that character, it's going to be treated with the same respect as what it is in these two films. And case in point, the first thing we see in Terminator 3 is he puts on Elton John glasses and says, "Talk to the hand," and that's you know, not that I'm saying to people who know much more about making movies than I do, I was right. See, I told you so. But it was a little bit like I knew this was kind of going to happen.
It's my favourite bit of music in film. This bit, that Bishop's Escape, it's called. And
you know,
they reused in a lot of trailers, of course. I use this sequence in film studies as an example of the difference between diegetic and non-diegetic sound, and I explained to everyone that all these pillars of crunched metal that keep falling down all around them, basically polystyrene, but they sound kind of so good. And that bit there, that nuclear explosion beneath the clouds is basically a light bulb underneath cotton wool. So, you know, there you go. No, I love that stretch of music.
Yeah. I mean, it's one thing we haven't really spoken about thus far, probably because it's on mute. And some movies sometimes you watch on mute and it really takes away from it because the music is so good. And whilst the music is so good here, it hasn't taken away from the movie. But one thing I picked out is because it's been a while. I think the last time I watched Aliens probably was about 5 years ago.
Yeah.
So quite a while since I last watched this. And I've watched, going back to the Terminator a couple of times, is how similar in places the music is to the Terminator. There is certain noises and sounds.
Yeah.
It's that kind of, that metal clinking kind of
I love that
pipes in a pipe room. You know,
that
type of sound that is so similar. And seems to be instantly for me, takes me to a certain place in my bedroom watching a movie on Channel 4, I presume, when I shouldn't have been watching it and I should have been in bed, and I saw that red glint of the Terminator's eye.
Well, this would definitely have been on ITV because I remember the TV edit with all the swearing kind of dubbed over. So the bit where they're confronting Burke, Hudson doesn't say "you rat fuck son of a bitch," he says "you rat fat son of a bitch." I remember that one distinctly. RoboCop was the most hilarious for swearing overdubs. That was just a classic.
Yeah, there's a classic one that we spoke about with the Die Hard.
Yeah.
And I can't think what it is now, but it seems to be that, you know, that has almost become a whole pop culture
I don't think a lot of people nowadays, younger people today don't realise, because that's not really a thing anymore.
No, it's not.
It just isn't.
Usually things are just cut from...
or I mean, everything. Well, that's it. Everything's on streaming. So they're less likely to watch things.
I can't remember the last time I watched a movie that was a movie premiere on a TV channel.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, well, because they're premieres for TV, but they've been out on streaming or other things for ages, or Disney. But it's just not done anymore because everything that has got that sort of content is shown after the watershed now. And well, it was back then, but even back then, it was when much more people were watching TV. These films were shown after the watershed, but they would still be dubbed out. But now it's just not. It doesn't happen. If they're shown on TV now, they don't dub anything over. It's not a standard anymore.
I mean, the grimmest thing in these movies for me have always been the androids when they're ripped to buggery. Like, seeing Ian Holm and Lance Henriksen, covered in milk and cream, which is what they used, and in Lance Henriksen's case, curdled milk and cream.
Oh, poor guy.
It's that is more gruesome than anything else. But we get to this amazing, and it's tiny details that make this shot of Ripley in the power loader amazing, followed by one of the best movie lines in history.
Oh, I love the subtitles. The word "bitch" was in italics.
It was in italics.
Does that happen much? I don't really pay much attention, but maybe the people who are putting together the subtitles like we've got to put some emphasis on this because it's an all timer.
But yeah, the subtle details, which are the little spinning orange light on top of the power loader. I don't know why, but for me, just tops it off, and it is the literal cherry on top of the cake.
Yeah.
But that immortal line, "Get away from her, you bitch," in the book novelization, which I have read a long, long time ago, and I remember it because it isn't, unfortunately, it isn't "Get away from her, you bitch." It is "Get away from her, you."
Oh yeah.
Which, I mean,
horrifying
for anybody who is an aspiring writer. Don't read that. And I mean, it wasn't the writer's fault. I think it was, again, pseudo interference with a shaking fist up to the sky.
Well, I think they were just trying to get it out to younger kids, I think. And,
but "Get away from her, you" wouldn't have quite had the same lasting impact as "Get away from her, you bitch." And Sigourney Weaver's delivery on that as well is really understated. Like, it's not, she doesn't shout it. There isn't a overemphasis on the word bitch. It's just very.
She sounds like a parent protecting her kids. That's what a parent would do.
It's a very matter of fact. You fucked up now, boy, type phrase. Where, okay, we were fucking around before. Now it's serious.
The use of miniatures in this is so judicious, is so carefully done. I mean, I've never even thought about that, the power loader and the Queen toppling into the airlock as miniatures.
You just accept it as immediate, and to the point where I can't remember, but the guys who worked on this, they got a phone call from a very well-regarded prop maker and special effects coordinator in the industry. He rung them up and was like, "I have to say, the work you've done on this movie is sensational." And I think he even asked the question, "Where did you find that power loader from?"
Yeah.
And they were like, "What do you mean?" He was like, "Where did you find it? I've never seen one of those before." And he's like, "We made it." And he was like, and he didn't believe them. He's like, "You didn't make that." It's like, "No, we, and it goes back to that thing of it. It is so real and lifelike that it
and again,
looks like.
And not only did we make it, it's not even metal; it's plexiglass and foam.
And at every point you go, that literally looks like it is a power loader. Like before this, nobody knew what a power loader was, but we accept it, and it's 100%, believable. And then we just on that shot of Newt grabbing onto Bishop, or half of Bishop, and for me, that cemented Bishop for me as being you can trust Bishop until you get to the end of Alien 3. Spoilers, but it has been out for nearly 30 years, so
that's the human Bishop, I guess, rather than the android one.
And
but I would have loved. It's one of those. It's like Die Hard. I would love, but this one especially. I was like, what must people have felt when they saw this for the first time in 1986? Surely they must have been absolutely blown away.
That is always the thing I think about when we do great movies from yesteryear. Is what must it have been like to not know what this movie is, and going and watching it,
and not being spoiled by 10 other sequels, spin-offs, and all that sort of stuff.
It just, totally sitting in its space in that time and being totally 100% fresh and brand new.
Yeah,
and I think obviously we spoke last time about Tarantino, but I think he uses a quote, or has mentioned a quote in the past, where he says, whenever you watch movies or you rewatch a movie, there's an element.
Look at that. That's an upside down keypad. Look at that, isn't it? Oh, maybe not. No, like it's a keypad. Sorry. Carry on.
Yeah, you're always trying to get back to the first time you watch that movie.
Yeah.
You can never watch a movie for the first time again.
Yeah.
And you're always trying to get back to that point. And there are some movies that are obviously far better at putting you back in that situation, or that, that mindset. But there are some movies that you just, if you had a time machine, I wouldn't go back and, save the world from whatever. I wouldn't go back and look at history.
Yeah.
I'd go back to 1986 and go, right, first showing of midnight showing of Aliens.
Yeah. I mean, I think Jurassic Park and The Matrix are the two that come closest for me. Like, I was there, I saw them for the first time with everyone else, and they were absolute game changers, those two films. And I remember, so I can imagine what it might have felt like.
The one for me that I want to do more than anything, I'm saying this as if like this is a possibility, like I've conquered time travel, but for me is The Dark Knight. And the reason for that, even though it being so kind of close in terms of history, is because I vividly remember, before I really knew who Christopher Nolan was, I remember Jim and my sister going to the movies, and immediately they were like, have you seen the new Batman movie?
Right.
And at that point I wasn't really into Batman,
and
he was just like, no, you need to go and see it. And I didn't take up his advice, but for that Christmas, and it seems to be something that doesn't really happen now, whereby Christmas time you used to get the movies that you wanted to watch in the year, or the games or whatever it is. But and we all sat round and watched on DVD, not even on Blu-ray, The Dark Knight. And immediately after finishing that movie, I was like, I should have gone and saw that in the cinema, like he said, and I just never got around to it.
I went and saw that with Becky and a couple of friends, and the atmosphere, it was so, I was, to this day, I was like, I can't believe this is a 12A.
Well,
I think it could have easily been a 15.
There was a lot of talk in this country because of and I think the main crux of it was because of the Joker's kind of use of knives.
There was another spate of knife crime at the time.
Yeah.
Not that the makers of the film would have known that, but it's just the knives up against the mouths, and there was just it's so, for a Batman film, it is so realistic. The city feels really, really real, and it's just so oppressive. It's bizarre. And the bit, everyone was just, literally, I swear I heard people's jaws dropping right onto the floor and clattering around at the pencil magic trick.
Yeah.
And I think we were like, how is this? It was, that was an incredible feeling watching that film.
And in terms of movie moments, much like you want to see it in a world where it hasn't been parodied for so long, and and the same with Heath Ledger's Joker, and the same here with like all of those great moments without the parodies that have come afterwards, or the shit versions of it that have come afterwards, that kind of that's the curse of great movies, is that usually it starts a trend, and it starts a world in which we see shit versions of that same movie time after time after time, and sometimes it detracts an awful lot, like we were saying the other day about Hans Zimmer scores have meant that every movie trailer, even adverts, if they want to be big and epic, have that big booming music, and to some extent kind of taints when you watch The Dark Knight now a little bit, where you're kind of going, it almost feels a bit too much because you've heard it so much. And that is the curse of being a great, successful movie, is that everybody wants to do what you've done.
Yeah, but no, Aliens, it's in the culture. People know all about it, whether they've seen it or not. And I say, where we started, I mean, it says something that for my 40th birthday, I filled that cinema screen with 40 friends in 40 seats, and we watched Aliens. I kind of wish I'd actually picked the theatrical version, actually, come to think of it. I was being a bit snobby. But,
I think it's one of those examples where
I just wanted them to get absolutely everything and see absolutely everything.
I think it's one of those examples where the theatrical version is actually, I think, better than the director's cut. Usually I try to go for the director's cut because you tend to see what the director intended.
Do you remember what the tagline was for the original video? Well, I don't know. Well, the VHS when the special edition came out in 1992, what the tagline was?
No.
It was, "This time it's more."
Oh, yeah.
The 17 extra
in my head
minutes.
I was going, well, I know the tagline for the original was "This time it's more." I was like, I mean...
Yeah, but it was very exciting. And again, I mean, that wasn't before... That was just after the Blade Runner director's cut, I think, because the director's cut was 1990 of Blade Runner. But Blade Runner wasn't on my radar at that point in the same way as all the other things were. So this was my first experience of a special edition, a director's cut of any kind. Yeah, it's never occurred to me before, but it was. Even though Blade Runner got there first, I don't think I'd even seen it at that point or knew about the whole Blade Runner thing. So watching the special edition after being so used to the original edition was really exciting. Yeah. And that's why I stuck with it.
And, going back to that thing of when you love something, you do just want to see more of it. Which is why they put deleted scenes on DVDs, because people want to see what, more of this. No, not more of the same, but they want to see more of that world or more of that particular film. And I think it's, going back to what we were saying earlier, something about wanting to be back in, having never lived in 1986. If I had the use of time travel, I would go back to the 80s and watch all the great 80s movies in the cinema for the first time.
Yeah. Yep.
As I say, I saw The Running Man last night. I quite enjoyed it.
I was let down.
But it's just not the same as 80s movies.
No.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Bury Our Bones with Cinema. We really appreciate you joining us as we deep dive into the world of film. Be sure to follow us on all of our social media pages to stay informed. You can find us on YouTube, TikTok and Instagram at Bury Our Bones with Cinema. You've been listening to Jimmy Murphy, Gaz Evans and Ryan Etherington. We will see you next time for more cinematic discussions and hidden treasures. Until then, don't forget to keep your bones buried in the world of cinema. And it will be a one-button job. Boom, 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 toom, toom, toom.
I have a terrible tendency to just swear about but if you're talking, when we're doing it, I still find it slightly distracting.
It's a bit weird, but I think it's a bit weird, but I suppose...
maybe if you listen to it back, see if it sounds... I was like, I'm going to have to stop it. You listen to it back,
Good job I observed that well, wasn't it?